Good morning, everyone. Hello. Thank you for joining us. Just going to wait a couple seconds here because I can see there are people still logging in. Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our hand and dexterity exercise series. Today is week 5 of 6. It's gone by really quick. So today is our second to last session. Um, so next week, our 6th week, will be our final week of the hand and dexterity workshop. I hope you've all enjoyed this workshop so far. Um, and I know that we do have a couple of new people joining today. You missed the first bit of the workshop, but that's okay. You can absolutely still follow along if today is your first time joining us. So for those who are new, I just want to draw your attention to the chat box, which should be open on your right-hand side. So during today's webinar, I won't be able to hear you. So if you did have any questions or you want to communicate with me, by all means, you can use the chat box and you can type your questions or any comments that you have. If you don't see the chat box open on the right-hand side, it might be in a collapsed icon at the bottom of your screen, in which case it looks like a little blue circle. If you click on it, it should open up the chat box. And once you do have the chat box open, you should see at the very top of the chat box, there is a YouTube link that I pinned there. So that YouTube link is a link to our hand and dexterity exercise playlist. So on that link, you can see that we've got all the recordings from this series that we're doing and the recording from the hand and dexterity series we did last year. So last year we only did 4 sessions, whereas this year we are doing 6. So in total, you will have 10 exercise videos on that playlist once we finish with this series after next week. So if you would like, you can click on the link and you can save it onto your browser, or if not, you can always email us and we can always send you the link as well. So that's a good place to, I guess, a good link to hold on to if you want to revisit the classes in the future. Hi, everybody. Thanks for your messages in the chat box. Ooh, from Toronto. Well, hello. Okay, so for today, we are going to be using our equipment again. So we've got our little towel. So you can, let me hold it sideways so you can see it. So it's a pretty small tea towel or kitchen towel that I've got here today. So make sure you have something like that. So not a big bath towel, definitely not. But if you had like a hand towel, or even like a face cloth, it might be a little bit too small, but that's okay. You can use that as well, as long as it's not too bulky. And I've also got here an elastic band. So this is just a hair tie that I have. But if you have an elastic band of some sort that you can use today, that would be great. Ideally, nothing that's too big. But if you do have one that's big, that's okay as well. We can always double loop it when we use the elastic band later in the exercise. So you probably, for those who have been here for the entire series, you'll probably recognize that with every session, things get progressively harder. So with today being the second to last session and then next week being the last session, these 2 remaining sessions are going to be relatively challenging. So if you are new today and you're finding that the things that we're doing in the class is pretty difficult, don't worry, don't panic. It's part of the series to make it more challenging as we go on. So do your best. If you can't follow along, don't worry, it's absolutely fine. You can always go back to our YouTube link and watch some of the videos from the earlier weeks if you think they will help you. But just try your best. At the end of the day, it's supposed to be a little bit of a fun class and it's meant to be challenging. So if it's not challenging, then we're not doing our jobs here. So don't worry if things are feeling a little bit tough. They're meant to feel tough. And you'll probably see me mess up a couple of times in the class too, because some of these exercises are pretty challenging for me as well. So don't worry if you feel like they're hard, you're not the only one. Okay, so I can see most people have logged in now. Still a couple of people trickling in, but that's okay. They can just join us whenever they do get in. Um, and just a little reminder before we start the class today is because it's a hand and dexterity class, we're going to be fully seated. So there's no standing in the class. But what you can do when you're sitting down is you can have a little table in front of you if you would like to just support your arms when we're doing some of these exercises. Okay, are we ready? Should we get started? Let's get it over with. Okay, I'm going to move back. So as always, we're going to start off our class by doing a bit of a warm-up, okay? So the reason we do our warm-ups for our arms and upper backs and probably a little bit of the neck as well is because everything is connected. So you can imagine if we're sitting in this kind of posture and we're kind of caving in with our shoulders, you know, the front of our chest is pretty tight because we're always sitting like this. You can imagine there's probably not a lot of room for your arms to move. So it's pretty important that we warm up sort of from the ribs upwards when we're doing these kind of hand dexterity movements. Okay, so I want you to shuffle to the front of your chair so you can have your feet flat on the floor. And if I turn to the side, you can see my back is not leaning against the chair, right? We want to sit up nice and tall, feet flat on the floor, arms dangling by your side. To start with, we're just going to roll our shoulders back in a circle. So we're rolling it backwards. Getting this movement to be nice and slow. We're not going fast. We're going slow, but we're exaggerating the circle here. So we really get all the different curves in that circle. So we're not just going up and down, but we're going forward, up, back, and down. Good. Let's go for 10. 9, nice and slow. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, last one, still sitting up tall. And we're gonna go forward for 10, 9, 8, as big of a circle as you can, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, last one. Still sitting up nice and tall. We're going to float those arms up, hands onto your chest, elbows lifted. From here, you're going to open your arms and you're going to rotate your upper body to the side and then come back in. Noticing how as I'm doing this rotation, I'm not just opening the arms, right? So it's not my arms moving, but it's kind of your whole body. So if you were to look at me from the front, all I'm doing is straightening the arms and bringing them back in. That's all I'm doing with the arms, but I'm rotating using my upper back. Sitting up nice and tall, imagine your spine as a long towel and you're wringing the towel. So we're not twisting it, right? But we're wringing it on the spot. Good. Let's do 4 more here. We go 4, 3, 2, leading with the breastbone, last one, and coming back in and resting the arms. From here, we're going to drop our chin towards our chest like so, and then you're going to do a small semicircle with the neck, so only the bottom corners, the bottom semicircle here. So we're not going upward yet, we're just going down and around to the side like so. And feel free to go nice and slow for this. So I don't want you to go too quick right now because we just want to start to warm up some of these structures that might be a little bit tight. Making sure we're still sitting up nice and tall as we're doing this. So we're not slouching, we're keeping our chest open, our spine nice and long. Good. And then on the next one, you're going to just take the circle fully around to the back as well. Nice and gentle, trying to make sure you're actually drawing a circle with the crown of your head and not an oval, not a triangle, not a rectangle. You want to go all the way around. 2 more in this direction. If this is feeling not great for you, don't worry. Just don't go as far in your circle, but see if you can do a little bit of a mini rotation still. Okay, same thing on the other side. Taking your time, sitting up nice and tall as you go all the way around. Again, you don't need to go too big if this doesn't feel great for your neck and it feels like something is pinching or crunching. Go a little bit less. You don't have to move to the extremes, but I still want you to try and get some movement into the neck, because too often do we hold our neck and head posture in a sort of forward slouched position. And it does feel quite nice to stretch it out. One more. Good, and bring your head back to the middle. We're now going to bring one of our ears down towards our shoulder, so not shoulder up to the ear, but your ear down to the shoulder. Give it a stretch, taking your hand on the same side as where your head is going. If you gently place a hand at the top of your head, and then slowly bring that stretch down just a little bit further. If you would like, you don't have to, just for a few seconds. And then we're going to let go and come back up. Same to the other side, ear to shoulder, not shoulder to ear, right? And then your hand on the same side as where your head is going. You're going to gently place your hand on your head and then give it a little bit deeper of a stretch here, pulling down slightly onto the head. Only if you want, you don't have to. And then we're going to come back up. Good. From here, we're going to bring out one. Continue. You're going to bring one of your arms forward, palms facing up. Take your other hand, start at the shoulders. We're going to squeeze down the arm. So we're just waking up some of our nerve endings here, all the way down to your palm, to your fingers. So we're not squeezing very hard. We're just gently giving ourselves a little bit of sensory feedback to our brain, so we can remember that our arm is still here, all the different parts of our arms that we might use in our class today, all the way down to the wrist, the palm, the fingers, not forgetting about the thumb, and then all the way back up. It's like giving yourself a massage. And then we're going to do the same thing on the way down, except this time we're tapping. So you're gently patting or tapping down the length of your arm. Again, waking up those nerve endings all the way to those fingertips and palms and back up again. So you don't have to tap super fast. This is just about waking up those nerve endings, not about how fast or how hard you're tapping your arm, right? And all the way back up. And then we're going to flip that arm over so that your palm is facing down, exactly the same thing. Tapping all the way down the length of your arm, including those fingertips, and then coming all the way back up. One more, tapping all the way down, including the fingertips, and all the way back up. And then we're going to relax the arm. Same thing on the other side, palm facing up. We're going to start with squeezing from the shoulder. So gentle squeezes, we're not hurting our arms. We're just gently squeezing down the length of our arm to give ourselves a little bit of a sensory feedback, reminding our brain all the different parts of our arms that it can control, and all the way back up. Good, let's do one more. Squeezing all the way down the length of our arm, including the wrist, the palms, the fingertips, the thumb. Cover as much surface area as you can. And then when you come back up to your shoulder, we're going to repeat the same motion, but now with tapping all the way down our arm. So we're still on the inside of our arm right now when we're doing our tapping, including those fingertips and coming all the way back up. One more. All the way down the length of the arm, waking up those nerve endings, getting our body ready for our slightly more challenging class today. And then we're going to flip the palm down like this. So we're tapping the back of our arm. All the way back up. So remember, we're not slapping our arm, right? We're gently tapping. We don't want to hurt ourselves, but we just want to stimulate those nerve endings a little bit. All the way to those fingertips and all the way back up and relax those arms. Okay, we're going to bend those elbows, palms facing up. From here, shoulders down. So try not to do this. Want the shoulders down. Keeping your wrists nice and straight, we're going to rotate. So it's rotation from the forearm, kind of like the queen wave, if you will. Okay, palm facing up, we're going to rotate the entire forearm down as far as you can, holding it for just a few seconds, and then rotating back up as far as you can, almost like you're trying to get the little finger towards the ceiling, and then down almost like you're trying to get your thumb all the way facing the floor without bending the wrist, right? So we're just doing these kind of movements. So the reason we have our elbows bent as we're doing these movements is because this rotation, when our elbows are bent, is coming from the forearm. But when our elbows are straight, it's actually coming from the shoulder, which we don't want right now. We just want that forearm rotation. So continue on a few more times in your own time, holding that stretch for just a few seconds, and then rotating in the other direction. Good. And then you're going to clasp your hands together. And then from here, with your elbows bent, without the arms moving, you're just going to draw a figure of 8 with your fists. See if you can go for 5 figure of 8s here. Now, I know in previous sessions, there are some people who mentioned they have wrist injuries. If you're one of those people, just be a little bit careful with this movement because I don't want to aggravate anything, but see if you can still move, maybe in a smaller figure of 8. We still want to have this kind of wrist flexion and extension type movement here. Let's do 3 more. 2 more. Last one. And we'll rest. Okay, I'm going to move my chair forward so you can see me a little bit better. We're going to start with our exercise today. So we're just going to review some of those things that we did in the previous weeks because we're going to put it together in a little bit more of a challenge today. I'm going to bring my screen up so you can see me better. So you can't see right now, but I have a table in front of me and I'm resting my elbows on the table just so that way I don't have to hold my arms up the whole time. So if you have a table, please feel free to do that as well. We're going to start with our gentle finger thumb opposition exercise to begin our series today. So we're going to open our hands nice and wide, noticing how all of my fingers are pointing upwards and outwards. So they're not bent in any way and they're not together like so. We're really opening those fingers, keeping them nice and long as much as you can. From here, you're going to bring the tip of your index finger to your thumb without the other fingers curling in or scrunching down. You want to keep them nice and open, so nice gaps in between those fingers, and you want them pointing upwards and outwards again. And then you're going to open those fingers back up. You're going to take the tip of your middle finger and you're going to tap the tip of your thumb, keeping the other fingers upright, and then opening up again. Ring finger to your thumb, and then opening again. Little finger to our thumb, and opening again. We're going to do the same thing in reverse. So now, if you're someone who's been here for the entire series so far, this is probably going to be relatively simple for you. So I want you to try to challenge yourself and go a little bit faster, okay? So I'm going slow right now because I want everybody to be able to follow along, including people who are new today. So if you're finding this opposition movement pretty easy, please feel free to go quicker, but emphasizing on the opening, right? So I don't want to see our fingers do this. We want to think amplitude, okay? Meanwhile, I'm going to do this nice and slow. So for folks who are new today, you can follow along to my tempo as well. Now, if you're doing it faster, make sure that your technique is good, okay? So I don't want you to think, okay, this is easy, so I'm going to do as fast as I can, but all of your fingers are bent or they're closed, or you're now slouching in your posture. So it's really important that if you are going to use speed as a challenge, that you're actually doing the right technique, right? I know I'm being very picky. Good, keep it going. Trying to make sure none of the other fingers are moving as much as you can. Of course, there'll be some movement because your fingers are all connected, but you want to try your best to not move the rest of the fingers and that you're only moving the two fingers that you actually want to move. Good, well done. So wherever you are in the sequence, see if you can finish off that round, and then we're going to move on. Good. When you finish, you're going to shake out your hand. Okay. Our next one is also something we've done before. We're going to open our palm and our fingers again, but this time, rather than having them open like this, we're going to squeeze those fingers together. So if I turn my hand to the side, you can notice that it's pretty flat, right? So I'm not cupping my hand in any way or bending them in any way. You want the hand to be completely flat. So it's kind of like if I were to press my hand against a shop window and I'm peering inside the shop, is that idea of pressing your hands against something. Except we're not pressing our hands against something, so hence the challenge. But you're trying to get the hands to be as flat as you can, squeezing those fingers together, and then you're going to go ahead and open your first web space, like so. Just the first one. Everything else stays where it is, nice and flat, and squeezing together, closing. Now the next space over, we're opening, but keeping the rest of the fingers together. From the side, notice how my index finger is not like this. I'm keeping everything nice and flat. And then you're bringing it back in. Then opening the next space over, keeping your hand nice and flat, and then closing back in. And then the last space over, keeping your hand nice and flat still, and then bring it back in. Same thing in reverse. Now, again, if you're someone who's been here for the entire series and you're finding this to be starting to get relatively easy, by all means, feel free to speed it up, but making sure your hand is flat. So I don't want to see you do these kind of things where things speed up, but then your fingers are starting to bend, right? So we want to make sure we're doing the right technique if you are going to speed this up. So you're welcome to speed it up if you would like, but I'm going to stay at the speed because we have some new folks today in the class and I want to make sure everyone can follow along. So really trying to keep your palm as flat as you can, especially the thumb. A lot of the times our thumb wants to curl back in. So try to keep it as flat as you can and keep all of your fingers nice and flat as well. So if this is really hard for you and you can't separate your fingers at all, don't worry. What you can do is place your hands down on a table And then do the same thing, sliding those fingers against a table or against a window, against a wall, or something like that. So if you're doing a free hand without your hands on anything, and that's really tough, don't worry. See, you can start with pressing your hands onto a surface, and you can kind of slide those fingers out in these positions. So don't worry if things are challenging. This is a hard exercise anyway, okay? So don't worry, don't feel bad. We just need to work at whatever level you're at right now, and then things will get better with practice. Because practice makes what? Not perfect. Practice makes progress. Okay, keep it going. So wherever you are, you're going to finish that round. Good stuff. Once you finish, you can shake out your hands. You can open and close those fingers a couple times if they're starting to feel sore. Our next exercise is going to be combining the two movements we just did together. So you can imagine this is already going to be pretty challenging, but I will show you. So the first exercise, just to remind you, we did this, right? So tapping the ends of the fingertips to the thumb. You remember that one? And then the one that we just did was keeping the hands nice and open. We're opening the spaces between the fingers. Now, we're going to do both of them together. You're going to have one hand open into the opposition movement that we did, the exercise 1, right? Yeah, you remember that one? The second hand is going to be doing exercise number 2. So we're doing them both at the same time. Whew. You can imagine how tough this is going to be. I'm going to try my best not to mess up so you can see. Yes, live long and prosper. Absolutely. Very good. Star Trek reference if anybody doesn't know what that means. Okay, one hand open and then one squeezing in like so, nice and flat. So this is how it's going to work. One of your hands is going to be tapping to the thumb and the other one is going to be opening. And then you bring it back to neutral. Next finger is going to touch the tip of the thumb while the other one is opening. I can sense the dread in the room already. So please do this nice and slow, okay? So this is not about speed. This is more a brain challenge that we're doing here. Once you've done that, you're going to switch to the other side. So this one here is similar to when you do dual tasking. So for anyone who does any kind of Parkinson specific exercise, you'll probably hear us harp on about dual tasking a lot, which is kind of like multitasking. This is a form of dual tasking, except rather than getting you to say words or say things like naming animals from the letter A all the way to Z while doing a physical task, you're actually changing your cognitive set instead. So we're getting the brain to figure out two completely different cognitive sets, two completely different activities, and you're trying to merge them together. And switch. I'm trying not to look at my camera too much because whenever I look at it, the hand is opposite to what I'm doing. So my right hand is actually my left hand in the screen, and it's messing me up a little bit. So I'm trying not to look at the screen. But I hope that you can try to follow along. You can do this nice and slow, making sure we're still doing the right technique. We're still sitting up nice and tall, making sure that your palm is still nice and flat, right? Fingers are long and straight as we're doing this. I know this one's a pretty challenging one. It's probably the hardest one we've done so far. So don't worry if you can't do this at all, or if you're doing a little bit, but you're getting really messed up every time you try. Don't worry. This is a very challenging exercise. Believe it or not, I had to practice this a few times too before showing you this exercise today in order to get my brain around it as well. So don't worry if this is feeling tough for you. It's a very difficult exercise in general, okay? So don't panic. Just try your best, going nice and slow. We're challenging our brain here with the different kind of cognitive sets we're doing, because we're doing two completely different exercises on each of our hands. So make sure that as you're doing this, we're switching hands as well, right? So we're not doing the same cognitive set with each hand, but every time you finish, you're switching to the other side. Let's see if we can do 2 more rounds, and then we'll move on. Do you all hate this yet? Or maybe you're hating me for making you do this exercise. But keep it up. You're doing really good. I know this one's tough. Let's do 1 more. So wherever you are, finish off that set, and then we'll shake our hands out. And then shake out your hands when you're finished. You can open and close those fingers a few times, rub them out if you feel that your hands are a bit sore. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is we're going to take our little towel. So our towel, so the one I'm using now is the kitchen towel. So you can see it's pretty small. It's not going to be like your bath towel, right? So if you're new today, you'll see why in a second. We don't use bath towels because it'll be very tough if you are using a bath towel. So hopefully you all have a little towel beside you. We're going to start one hand at a time. So for those who have been here in the last couple of weeks, you probably know what we're about to do with the scrunching, right? So you can feel free to start if you like, but I'm going to take a couple minutes here to explain the exercise. Okay, so for those who are new, we're starting in the corner, okay? So we're holding on to the towel, the corner of the towel. Now you'll notice that my hand is facing downward, right? So my fingers and palms are facing downward. We're doing this for a reason, okay? So try not to have your hand facing up or sideways. We want it to be facing down, holding the corners. Now, using your fingers, you're going to try to scrunch up the towel into your palm, noticing how my palm is facing down. So I'm not doing this, right? I'm not cheating and trying to throw the towel and catch, but I'm keeping my hand facing down, and I'm using my fingers, and I'm gonna try to scrunch the towel into a ball, as small as I can. So I'm trying to scrunch up as much of the fabric into my palm as I can, trying to use all of my fingers so I'm not having some fingers stuck underneath. And then I'm just moving back so you can see. And then when you can't scrunch up anymore, when it's in as small of a ball as you can, what you're going to do is you're going to throw and catch with that same hand. So you'll notice here when I throw, my palm is facing down. So I'm throwing with the back of my hand facing up, and I'm catching in the same orientation. So I'm not throwing and catching like this or catching like this, but I'm throwing with the palm facing down, and I'm catching with the palm facing down. So I don't know if you can hear this, but as I'm throwing and catching, there's this sound like this. Maybe you can't hear. I've got headphones in, so maybe you can't hear. But you want that sound as you're catching that towel. So it's kind of like you're smacking your hand against the fabric a little bit. So once you've caught that, you're going to move on to the other hand. Exactly the same thing. The other hand, you're scrunching that towel into your fist with your palm facing down into as small of a ball as you can. And then when you can't go any more, you're going to keep your palm facing down. You're going to throw and catch forcefully. Like that, okay? And then you're going to switch to the other hand. Now, keep going. If you find this really challenging, what you can do, you can see how there's a table in front of me. If this is too hard, what you can do is put your hand on a table or on your shirt, on your leg, whatever you like to try to help you scrunch. That's okay as well. So if you're finding that when you do it freehand, when you have your hand up like this, if you're not getting any movement at all, or the scrunching is it's just impossible to do, don't worry. See if you can rest your hand onto something and then do the same scrunching motion. And then when it's in a little ball, lift your hand off the surface and do the same throw and catch. So we're using the same hand to throw and catch with the palm facing down. And then you switch over to the other side. A little bit of hand-eye coordination here for you as well. So for those of you who might be having issues with the scrunching, you can see here that as I pull the fabric in with my 4 fingers, I then take my thumb out, grab more fabric, and then tuck it underneath so that my other fingers can be free to grab again. So you don't have to do it this way, but this is the way that I normally do it. So you'll find a way that works for you, but if you're really stuck, see if you can use this technique. Get the thumb to pull in the fabric, hold it while you release the rest of your fingers, and then you grab more. Take your time. There's no rush with this. I know this one's also pretty challenging. And then when you're ready, you're going to throw and catch, and then change to the other side. How are we all doing? Hopefully we're doing okay. If you're finding that your hand is getting sore, take a break. You can shake out the hand, or you can close it, open it a few times, move those fingers around, getting those muscles to relax if they're starting to cramp, okay? If you're finding this pretty easy and you've done this for a while, feel free to speed it up with the scrunching and the throwing and the catching, but you don't have to, okay? So if you feel like you have to do it slow, absolutely fine. Okay, so someone says, I have issues with throwing and catching. I just can't let go. Yes, okay. So I want you to think when you're throwing, so if I move back so you can see me, when you're throwing, I want you to almost imagine your, how do I say that? It's like if you had confetti in your hand and you're tossing it, but you're tossing it kind of with the back of your hand. So we're not tossing it like this, but you're using the back of your hand to kind of do that tossing motion. Imagine you're tossing forward. That would sometimes help, except rather than throwing forwards, you're taking that upward. So imagine it's like you're tossing confetti in the air, and then you're catching it again. So if tossing is hard, maybe forget about the catching and just practice the tossing and letting it float down. Practice the tossing up into the air and see if you can let your hand stay there as the fabric leaves your hand. So like this. Practice tossing. Oops, except don't hit your face like I did there with the little fabric. So you're tossing up in the air and then you're letting it drop, and ignore the catching if you're having issues with the letting go portion of it. So my hand does not get tired as much as it just stops responding. Yes, okay. When it stops responding, it probably means you need to go a little bit slower. So a lot of the times when it stops moving and the amplitude is next to nothing, that's usually your bradykinesia kicking in. So bradykinesia is slowness of movement, but it's not actually just slowness of movement. But as your bradykinesia kicks in, you actually find that the movement barely moves, not necessarily because of the slowness, but the amplitude itself decreases to nothing. So if that's the case for you, shake out your hand for a second. You can rub the in-between soft tissue in between those bones. Give yourself a bit of a rest, shake it out, and then restart slow. See if you can go nice and slow. If the scrunching is stopping your hand from moving, put it against something and scrunch against something nice and slow, or a table, your leg, something like that, okay? And see if that helps. but emphasize on the slowness and moving your fingers big. So kind of like you're moving through water in a slow motion type fashion. Hopefully that makes sense. We're just going to do a few more, and then we're going to change this one slightly, as if life wasn't tough enough with this one. If you're new today, hopefully I'm not scaring you off from the other videos of the hand and dexterity series. I know this is pretty challenging, but keep in mind that today is week 5, so we really ramped up the level of difficulty today, and you will see that as well next week. So don't worry if this is feeling tough and you're relatively new to this, because you can revisit the YouTube videos from the previous weeks and practice some of these things. Okay, so let's rest for a second, shake out your hand. We're going to keep hold of the towel. We're going to do the same movement, except this time we're going to throw and catch with your opposite hand. So it looks like this. You're still scrunching up the towel, just like we did. Exactly the same movement, scrunching up the towel, palm facing down if you can. And then when you can't go anymore, you're going to throw in the same orientation. So with your palm down, you're throwing like this, right? Then you're going to catch with the other hand downward. So not like this, not like this, down. So both your hands are down, okay? So like this. And you want to have that loud smacking kind of sound, okay? And then once you catch with the other hand, using that hand only, you're going to shake out the towel so that you're holding onto the corner only, and then you're scrunching it up again and throwing and then catching with the other side, and then drop the towel out into the corner and then scrunch again. So try to do that single-handed. So when you're loosening the towel again, don't use both hands if you can, okay? So you're throwing, same orientation, palm facing down, same orientation to catch, palm facing down like this. And then from here, using that one hand only, you're going to try to rejig the towel so you're holding onto the corner, and then you restart. So please do this slower if you like. I know I demonstrated that relatively fast just because I wanted to show you the entire sequence. But by all means, please do this slow, especially if you're finding that your fingers are getting stuck, okay? And again, if the scrunching is really tough for you, doing it free-handed like this, feel free to put it on a table and then scrunch it up against the table or against your shirt, against your leg, something like that. And then once you have it into a ball, then you can lift it up and do the throwing and catching with the other side. Well done, everybody. I know this one's tough as well. We'll do a few more here. Time has flown by today. Got about 15 minutes left, so we'll do a few more rounds here and then we'll move on to our next one. Oh, sorry, caught with the wrong side now, distracted myself. Okay, wherever you are, when you're finished with your last throw and catch, you're going to put the towel aside and we're going to grab our little elastic band. I'll just give you a couple seconds here. So you can shake out your hand if you like, or grab your little elastic band. Okay. So with our elastic band, we're going to bring one of our hands nice and straight like so. And you're going to loop the elastic band over all 4 of your fingers like so. Ideally a little bit higher up than what I just demonstrated. And then you're going to take your other hand and slip it in as well. So now, can you see? The elastic band is around all of your fingers like this, except for the thumb, but it's around all 4 of your fingers. Now, what you're gonna do here, whoops, let me just move this down. Okay, so I have my fingers together, so my hands are together like so, kind of like in a prayer position. And then what you're gonna do here is, oh, I see a comment, concentration causes tremor. Yeah, so actually, you'll find that with any exercises you do, when they're PD specific exercises that's challenging, your tremor tends to be worse temporarily with exercise. And that's very normal. It's just part of the fatigue. So when you have increased fatigue levels, you tend to be, you tend to have more tremors temporarily. So if you've ever taken any other exercise classes, you'll probably find at the end of the exercise class, your tremor is worse. And then when you've rested, the tremor is back to how it was before. So don't worry, don't let the tremor throw you off the exercise. Keep trying to push through it anyway, okay? Because that tremor is a very normal part of that fatigue level. Okay, so hands together like so with the elastic band around all 4 of those fingers on both sides. What you're gonna do here, let me maybe, I'll turn my screen down so you can see my hand. So my hands together. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to keep all of my fingers together, but I'm gonna pull open my index fingers against, so the band is around, right? So you're pulling against the band, opening those index fingers, keeping the rest together, trying not to do everything together. Whoops, I just moved my band. So you're just moving the index finger and then closing. And then you're just moving the middle finger against the band and closing. You're just moving the ring finger like this, which might be the hardest one here, and closing, and then the little finger. You can see how mine is barely moving, and that's okay. So just move as much as you can and rest. And then same thing again. I'm gonna bring my screen up, so hopefully you saw that. I'm gonna do that again. We're gonna move our index finger open, and close. The middle finger open with the band. I should probably move my band up a little bit further. And in. The ring finger opening and the little finger opening. And then same thing again, okay? So trying to keep those fingers nice and long if you can. Trying to keep the rest of the finger and the palms together if you can. So that way you're just moving the selective fingers into this kind of extended position. And then reversing it back. How are we doing? Hopefully okay. So for those who are new today, a really good idea when you're doing your finger exercise of any kind is using an elastic band. So if you have done any exercises with a physiotherapist before, you might have been given an exercise band, like, you know, those elastic exercise bands that provide a bit more resistance. So those bands are similar to using like an elastic band, but for your fingers, right? Because an elastic band, like a hair tie or something, also provides resistance. So it's like an exercise band, but for your fingers. So any exercise you do with your fingers, you can absolutely add a resistance band to make life a little bit harder for you, to help challenge your exercise. So you can imagine with any of those things we did earlier, like these ones, right? You can definitely add an elastic band to make things more challenging. Let's keep going a little bit more. See if you can do a few more rounds here. You can hold for a couple seconds on the ones that feel tough. So depending on your elastic band as well, this might be easy or it might, or it might be tough. So if you have a pretty stiff elastic like I have right now, because it's a pretty new elastic, then it'll be slightly more challenging than if you had a elastic that was maybe a little bit older and has lost its elasticity. So wherever you are in your round, See if you can finish off that round. And then when you finish, you can shake out your hands and relax. And you can shake it out. Woo, bend your fingers a few times if they're cramping up. Good. Okay. We're going to sit up nice and tall, and we're going to put our palms together like so into a prayer position. We're going to do a little bit of a stretch to finish. So sitting nice and tall, hands together, elbows down. We're going to open those elbows and slide those hands down like so. Yes, my palms are together like this. You bring the elbows out and dropping the hands down such that you get a stretch in your wrist. Just be a little bit careful if you're somebody with wrist issues like we previously discussed in the earlier sessions. So just be a bit careful you're not hurting yourself, but we do want to get a little bit of a stretch there. And coming back up. Let's do one more. Same thing. Elbows out. The further your elbows go out, the higher the elbows are, and the further your hands are down towards your navel, the more of a stretch you'll feel. And coming back up. We're going to do the same thing now with the back of our hands together. So this time, back of our hands together, elbows up nice and high, hands down low. You're going to pull the hands up and bring the elbows down. So you stretch the other side of your wrist and just holding it for a couple seconds here. Again, if you have issues with your wrist, just be a little bit careful. Don't go to the extremes with the positions here. And then we'll bring it back down. Same thing again, bring the palms up, or sorry, the hands up with the back of the palms together, holding it for a few seconds. And then relax. Taking our hand, we're going to squeeze just for a few seconds here. And then we're going to open the hands back up, really stretching those fingers as wide as you can. And then squeezing in again for just a few seconds. And then opening back up as wide as you can. One more. Squeezing in. And then opening back up. Good. Keeping the elbows bent. We're going to rotate the wrists. If one side feels stiffer than the other, feel free to take your hand and just pull a little bit more into that so you're pulling into that rotated position. And then let go. Same thing on the other side. If it's a bit stiff, pull with one hand because you're probably going to find one side is a little stiffer than the other. And then bring it down again as far as you can. And then rotating upwards. One more. Rotating down. Rotating upwards. Good. We're going to sweep our arms across our body all the way up. And breathing out all the way down. And again, inhale. And exhale. One more. Inhale. And exhale. And you are finished. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for week 5. So I can see a comment here, fingers are cold and stiff from possible Raynaud's. Okay, well, if you have Raynaud's, what you can try to do when you're doing these exercises is you can actually wear gloves. So not mittens, not the ones that have your fingers all together, but your actual gloves, the one that have separate fingers. You can do the same exercises with that. Or before your exercise, you can do a slightly longer warm-up, especially with the hands. So you can do more of these kind of movements to try to pump some blood into those hands to just help with that cold and stiffness if you like. But most commonly, wearing gloves is a really good way around that for Raynaud's. Great. Well, that's it for today. So next week is our last class. The recording from today will likely be up on our YouTube channel sometime next week, which is just pinned at the top of the chat box. So you can click on that link and then save that if you like. and then you can revisit those videos at a later date. And next week, because it's our last class, it's going to be a little bit more challenging again, but hopefully I haven't scared you off. If you have any questions or you have any suggestions for future series you would like to see, please feel free to drop us an email at info@parkinson.bc.ca. Yes, okay, you used to like me, but now you're scared of me. Okay, well, that's good too. Yes, so as I was saying, the hand and dexterity exercise class is actually, it came out of a suggestion that we got when we did some exercise webinars last year. So if you have any suggestions for exercise classes or types of exercises you would like to see in the future, let us know, and we can try our best to incorporate that in the future. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your week and weekend, even though I suppose every day is kind of like the weekend now that we're not going anywhere, but still, enjoy the rest of your week. Stay warm, and I will see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye.